Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today, going all the way back to 1969.
Oh, 1969.
Yeah, Camden, New Jersey,
Okay.
to unpack the case of Leroy Snyder,
Right?
a serial killer who, well, really left his mark on the city.
Yeah.
We're working with excerpts from a Wikipedia article about Snyder himself.
Interesting. Interesting.
So consider us your guides through this pretty dark story.
I think what makes this case so fascinating is that it's not just about the murders themselves, right?
Right.
It's about trying to understand the man behind them.
Yeah.
How does someone like Snyder, seemingly ordinary, become capable of such horrific acts?
Well, and you have to remember the backdrop here.
Yeah.
Camden in the late 60s was already a city on edge, right? Lots of social and economic unrest.
Right.
Then between February and September of 69, 7 people are brutally murdered.
Wow.
Suddenly fear is everywhere.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So paint the picture for us. What was it like living through this?
It was a nightmare, really.
Yeah.
Imagine the constant worry, looking over your shoulder, wondering who could be next.
I bet.
Parents wouldn't let their kids out of their sight.
Yeah.
Even adults felt unsafe just walking down the street.
Right, right.
The murders were brutal, multiple stabbings, beatings, some cases even involved sexual assault.
And each new victim just added to the terror, right?
Exactly.
This wasn't just some random act, it was a pattern.
A terrifying pattern.
So let's get into the specifics of the crimes, as disturbing as they are.
Okay.
Because maybe they can tell us something about Snyder himself.
Right.
So the first victim was Lula Crawley.
Uh-huh.
She was 45, owned a furniture store.
Okay.
She was found stabbed to death, hands tied, gagged,
Oh,
13 stab wounds.
that's a lot of rage.
Yeah, even seasoned investigators were shocked by the brutality.
Right.
And just 2 months later, Mary Freeman's body is found
Yeah.
floating in a vacant house, also raped and stabbed.
So both women, both attacked when they were alone and vulnerable.
A pattern starting to emerge.
Maybe. It's still early, though.
But then the case takes a turn.
Oh.
The next victims, Shirley Brittingham and Warren Wells.
Okay.
Shirley was 6 months pregnant, and Warren was a man.
So a man and a pregnant woman.
Found in an abandoned house, beaten, shot, and stabbed.
Wow. That changes things a bit.
It does.
What was Snyder's motive? Was this a crime of opportunity?
There's so many questions.
It really threw a wrench into the investigation.
Well, and speaking of the investigation,
Yeah.
it wasn't exactly straightforward.
No.
There were false leads, wrong arrests. This is 1969, remember?
Right.
Forensics wasn't what it is today.
They were relying on eyewitnesses.
Exactly. Which, well, we know those aren't always reliable.
Notoriously unreliable.
So, for example, an AWOL soldier, William McDaniels, was arrested, but he was released when it became clear he wasn't involved.
Okay.
Then, after Lovey Williams was murdered, a man named Richard Morton was picked up.
Lovey Williams.
Yeah, 52 years old, murdered in her own home.
Oh, right.
And they found Richard Morton with a hunting knife.
I see.
But he was later cleared, too.
So, still no real leads.
And meanwhile, the murders continue.
Oh, jeez.
Vera Stevens, 45 years old, beaten to death, signs of rape.
It must have been terrifying for the people of Camden.
Absolutely.
Every new victim just ramped up the pressure on the police.
Imagine the headlines.
Oh, yeah.
The public outcry.
That must have been intense.
And then we come to the final and perhaps most pivotal murder.
Okay.
Gertrude Friedman.
Tell me about her.
58 years old, worked in her own linoleum store.
Right.
Attacked while working alone, raped, throat slit.
That's awful.
And here's the key. Her watch was missing. Some clothes, too.
Stolen items.
And that detail would prove crucial.
I see.
Because just 3 days after Gertrude's murder, police raid Snyder's home. They find Gertrude's watch and her clothing.
Wow, the missing link.
And with that discovery, Leroy Snyder's reign of terror came to an end. Okay, so Snyder's arrested, right? Relief washes over Camden, but now everyone's asking, who is this guy? How did he become this monster?
Yeah, and it's tempting to just slap that label on him, monster, call it a day, but that doesn't really get us anywhere, does it?
Nope.
We need to try to understand what makes someone capable of these acts.
Right. So let's dig into Snyder's background.
Right.
What can we learn from his past? What were the red flags, maybe?
Well, his childhood was definitely not a stable one.
Yeah.
One of 10 kids. Poor family, right here in Camden.
Wow, 10 kids.
The Wikipedia article doesn't give us all the details, but you can imagine the environment.
Chaotic,
neglectful, maybe even abusive.
It's got to have an impact, right?
Oh, absolutely. Especially early childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Affects brain development, emotional regulation, Impulse control.
And then there's that incident when he was 18.
Oh, right.
Tried to strangle a woman with a clothesline.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
A pretty big red flag, wouldn't you say?
Huge red flag. Points to a predisposition for violence, lack of impulse control.
Did he get any kind of help, intervention back then?
It's hard to say. Things were different back then.
Right.
Our understanding of criminal psychology was limited, fewer resources for rehabilitation.
So basically, this warning sign was missed.
Pretty much.
And Snyder just keeps going down this criminal path.
In and out of prison.
Robbery, assault, even threats of rape.
Classic escalation of criminal behavior. You see it a lot with serial killers.
Really?
Starts small, then gets more serious, more violent, until finally...
Murder.
Exactly.
It's chilling, isn't it? Like each unchecked crime just chipped away at his inhibitions.
Makes you wonder.
Makes you wonder if things could have been different, right?
It's the question that haunts us. Could early intervention have changed the course of events?
It's a heavy thought.
Yeah, but an important one.
And we can't forget about the victims in all this.
Right, the 7 lives lost.
7 families forever changed by Snyder's actions.
The impact goes beyond the immediate horror, too.
How so?
Think about the fear that gripped Camden. People were afraid to leave their homes.
Yeah.
Businesses suffered. The community was fractured.
It was a city already struggling, right? Poverty, racial tensions, economic decline.
And then this wave of violence just adds another layer of trauma.
It's a reminder that these crimes don't just affect the victims, they ripple outwards.
Families, communities, whole cities.
It's hard to rebuild that sense of safety once it's shattered.
It is, but it's possible.
I think so.
Oh, absolutely. The human spirit is resilient.
Yeah.
Camden has worked hard to heal, to rebuild, to find hope for the future.
That's good to hear.
It's a long process, but they're doing it.
So Snyder's arrested. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief, but then he confesses.
Confesses.
Not just to Gertrude's murder, but to all 7.
Wow, all 7.
Provides chilling details, things that weren't even public knowledge.
Why would he do that?
That's the question, isn't it?
Confessions are complex. Sometimes it's about notoriety, that warped sense of pride.
Like bragging rights?
Yeah, something like that.
Or maybe a way to control the narrative, a last act of manipulation.
Could be. Or maybe even guilt. A subconscious need to be held accountable.
It's hard to know for sure.
We can only speculate, but it definitely adds another layer to this already disturbing story.
So what about justice? What happened to Snyder after the confession?
Well, this was 1970, remember? Death penalty was still a possibility.
Right.
But in New Jersey at the time, a confession alone wasn't enough for execution.
So what happened?
Snyder made a deal, pleaded guilty to all 7 murders in exchange for life sentences.
So he avoids the death penalty, but spends the rest of his life behind bars.
A chilling end to a chilling story.
This has been pretty heavy stuff, wouldn't you say?
It has.
I mean, really getting into the life and crimes of Leroy Snyder.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to zoom out a bit, look at the bigger picture,
I agree. It's not just about this one man. It's about understanding the bigger forces at play.
Right, and you mentioned earlier how Snyder's case makes you think about the justice system, how effective it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, could things have gone differently? Could those 7 lives have been saved?
Tough questions.
They are.
Snyder had a long rap sheet, a clear pattern of escalating violence.
Right.
So you have to wonder, could earlier intervention, tougher sentencing, better rehab programs, could any of that have made a difference?
It's a reminder that the system isn't perfect. There are always going to be cracks.
And sometimes those cracks have devastating consequences.
Exactly. Which brings us to the whole debate about criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
How do we balance punishment with rehabilitation? How do we get to the root of the problem?
And how do we create a system that's both fair and effective?
It's a complex issue.
Hugely complex.
And it's a conversation that needs to happen, involve experts from all sorts of fields.
Absolutely.
Law enforcement, psychology, sociology, even economics.
We need everyone at the table because this kind of violence, it affects us all.
And of course, we can't forget the victims.
Of course not.
The families who lost loved ones, the community that was traumatized.
Their stories matter. Their pain needs to be acknowledged.
And while we can't change the past,
Right.
maybe by understanding cases like Snyder's, by learning from the mistakes, we can prevent future tragedies.
That's what we have to strive for, a future where these kinds of things are less likely to happen.
So I guess the takeaway here is that these are complicated issues, no easy answers.
Yeah, it's not about finding a quick fix.
It's about working together, having those tough conversations, and hopefully making a difference.
Well said.
So, to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Leroy Snyder case.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
It's a disturbing story, but an important one, and we encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions,
That's right. Knowledge is power.
and never forget, even in the face of darkness, there's always light to be found.
Keep learning, keep engaging, and keep fighting for a better future.
Well said, and until next time, stay curious, stay informed.